What kind of killer threatens a city, then demands jazz's payment for mercy? In 1990 New Orleans, frightened families played music because silence might bring death. This is the Axeman of New Orleans, and the night a city obeyed a murderer. Welcome to the Curious Archive. Before the music, there was a bedroom door with one wooden panel carefully removed. Inside, Joseph Maggio slept beside Catherine, unaware someone had already entered their home. The intruder did not steal jewels, cash, or silver, he left behind something stranger. New Orleans knew crime, but this felt like a message written through locked doors. The police noticed the victims shared something quiet, ordinary, and dangerous: small neighborhood grocery stores. Most were Italian or Sicilian families, building modest success one loaf, onion, and coin at a time. In a city of rumors, success could become a target before anyone saw the weapon. Detectives searched for robbery, jealousy, blackmail, anything that made the pattern behave like reason. But the killer kept taking almost nothing, as if property had never mattered. He used tools found nearby, turning ordinary homes into unwilling accomplices. That detail haunted Detective Long, because it meant the killer arrived empty-handed. If he carried no weapon, then every backyard in New Orleans had armed him. Neighbors began sleeping in shifts, with fathers guarding hallways and mothers listening for wood cracking. Some bought stronger locks, others nailed boards across doors until their homes looked imprisoned. The Axeman had not only entered houses, he had entered the city's imagination. 3 months later, Joseph Romano heard something moving inside his home. His nieces rushed in soon after, catching only a fleeing shape in a dark suit. Romano survived long enough to become evidence, but not long enough to explain the shadow. Behind the house, police found the axe lying where a murderer had discarded it. The city wanted one face, one motive, one arrest that could let children sleep. But every suspect dissolved under questioning, leaving only maps, rumors, and another dark doorway. Then March came, and the Axeman chose a house where a child's cradle stood nearby. Charles Cortimiglia woke to disaster, with Rose beside him and little Mary between worlds. Rose survived, but grief and panic made her words sharpen into accusations. She named neighbors, then family, because pain often searches for a human shape. 2 men were arrested, but the deeper question remained untouched. If this was revenge, why had the same strange doorway appeared again? Why did every explanation fit one room, but fail across the whole city? The police thought fear had peaked, but the Axeman had not yet become a voice. On March 16, a newspaper opened a letter that sounded less human than theatrical. It claimed to come from hell, signed by the thing everyone feared. The writer mocked police, promised another visit, and offered mercy for one sound. At 12:15, it said, homes with jazz would be spared. But here is the twist: the letter may not have been written by the killer. Some later historians saw an educated prankster where the city saw a demon. Joseph John de Villa, a local songwriter, was waiting with a tune almost too perfect. The letter gave him terror, timing, publicity, and a whole city as orchestra. If de Villa wrote it, then the most famous Axeman message was also an advertisement. That did not make the murders imaginary, it made the fear more useful. People did not pause to debate authorship when midnight was approaching. They chose music because even a foolish warning could be right once. Cafés filled, parlors opened, and rented bands carried fear from block to block. Professional musicians played beside amateurs, because terror does not care about talent. Children fell asleep under ragtime rhythms, while parents watched doors between every note. At 12:15, New Orleans became the strangest concert hall in America. No one knew whether the Axeman listened from an alley, laughing at their obedience. No one knew if the letter writer sat safely somewhere, counting coins. But dawn arrived without another attack, and relief sounded almost like victory. Newspapers smiled at the jazz night, but some editors smelled a cruel joke. The city had survived midnight, yet the real murderer still had no name. Then, months later, Mike Pepitone woke the city's terror from its uneasy sleep. Esther Pepitone heard a sound no wife wants to recognize from another room. She reached the bedroom too late, and the back door breathed open behind her. Again, valuables remained behind, sitting in plain sight like an insult. Pepitone's death became the last confirmed note in the Axeman's awful melody. After October 1919, the attacks stopped as suddenly as they had begun. No final letter explained his silence, no confession arrived to clean the record. Some believed he died, fled, or simply found another city's darkness. Others whispered one name, Joseph Manfra, a criminal tied to Pepitone's world. But whispers are not verdicts, and history is filled with convenient villains. Years later, Pepitone's widow killed a man in Los Angeles, believing she had found him. Even that dramatic ending could not prove the Axeman had truly been unmasked. The case remained a room full of locked doors, each opening onto another doubt. There were no fingerprints strong enough, no camera footage, no science waiting to rescue truth. Detectives had bodies, tools, testimony, and one citywide performance of fear. What they did not have was the man himself. The Axeman became easier to remember as monster than as working man with ordinary hands. That may be why the letter survived better than the victims' names. A demon's boast travels farther than a grocer's ordinary morning. Yet the victims were not symbols, they were families behind counters, beds, and breakfast tables. They had crossed oceans, learned neighborhoods, opened stores, and locked their doors like everyone else. The Axeman turned that ordinary trust into the cruelest vulnerability. And the city, desperate for protection, turned even celebration into a shield. Imagine music not as joy, but as proof your family wanted to live. Imagine laughter at a party where every smile keeps glancing toward the hall. That was the Axeman's strangest crime, he made the city perform fear publicly. The more people played, the more powerful the unseen killer became. He became a rumor with a rhythm, a shadow keeping time. By morning, the killer had not appeared, but he had conducted everyone. That is why the Axeman survives, not merely as murderer, but as a director of panic. The unknown face became less important than the ritual he forced into being. A killer can vanish, a story repeated by frightened people keeps walking. Every retelling polished the axe, sharpened the letter, and dimmed the families. The legend grew because it had everything: murder, music, newspapers, and a city obeying darkness. But legends are dangerous, they can make terror look clever. The truth is colder: someone broke into homes and attacked families while they slept. Someone watched grief turn into spectacle, then disappeared behind the music. Maybe the Axeman was one man, maybe the legend stitched several crimes into one mask. Either way, New Orleans learned that fear could be printed, sold, and played aloud. The city stopped hearing footsteps, but it never fully stopped hearing that song. The most haunting thing about the Axeman is not his axe, but how easily fear found rhythm. Who do you think wrote the letter, the killer, the songwriter, or someone worse? If this story stayed with you, subscribe to the Curious Archive. The next mystery is already waiting.